Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday. So this week we're going to have a pretty simple project, but it's something I wanted to film because it's the culmination of a project that I started almost 2 years ago. So about 2 years ago or so, I built this. This is an Opentendo, which is a open source recreation of the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was made by Red Herring 32. And it's a really fun project because you can build an NES from scratch. And it was one of the first times I had done this. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I use this thing all the time. It's one of my favorite consoles. The only downside is that I have it in this kind of, yellowed, not so great looking NES shell, and I just did this because I really didn't have any other options. But since I built this thing, what I've really wanted for it is to have a clear shell so that you can see the, handmade motherboard on the inside and just give it like that kind of cool custom aesthetic. So about a year or so ago, I learned about a project from a company called Retro Game Restore, which is a completely all new NES shell made from clear plastic. And so that was exactly what I was looking for. So I jumped on this thing and I bought two of them. And now 1 year later, the shell has finally shipped. And so what I'm going to be doing today is taking this Opentendo out. I'll show you guys what I did, so that you can see all the cool features that this thing has. And then we're going to install it in this clear shell and take a look at how it performs. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so let's go ahead and unbox this thing. I went ahead and cut open the top, but I actually have not touched it since then. So let's go ahead and see what all the fuss is about. Yeah, this is really nice. So we've got some screws, and of course, here is the big reveal, which is the transparent shell. Oh man. Oh, I see. It's completely two separate parts. That is, wow. That is just beautiful. Look at that. I really never knew if this thing was going to get made, and it was kind of perfect timing that this thing was built right when I needed one. But yeah, that is just gorgeous. It is totally clear, so it's going to be very easy to see the NES on the inside once I finish building this thing. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, as you guys can see, there's no logo on here, and that's something that I kind of would like to remedy. And so what I ended up doing was buying this little metal sticker from a company called Luke Parts, and I'm going to have a link for this in the description if you guys want to do this yourself. It's basically a really nice metal sticker, and it allows me to have the Nintendo Entertainment System logo on here, because for probably obvious reasons they can't ship it with that. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully affix this, and so it has like two layers of plastic on it, like the adhesive layers back here. So I'm going to have to peel this back, line it up, position it, and then peel back the clear plastic to get this thing all set up. All right, so let me go ahead and get that going. Okay, so I've got the little logo put on here, and I have to say it looks really nice. Although it's kind of hard to see this on camera, so hopefully you guys are seeing it. It just makes the console look a lot more, I don't know, legit with the Nintendo logo on. These can be tough to put on. You have to make sure you have everything level and lined up. I did the best I could by eye. I'm sure it's not 100% perfect, but it's good enough for me to be happy with. All right, so before I go ahead and continue, I just wanted to give you a quick look at my Opentendo motherboard right here. So this is something that I built on the channel quite a long time ago, and I'll have a link in the description for what I did to build it. But effectively, it's a modern recreation of the original Nintendo Entertainment System. And so as you can see, it has sockets placed on most of the chips, and I also have an NESRGB installed, and so this gives me the best possible video from my Nintendo. And I also, instead of using an official RF modulator, I removed that and replaced it with this relatively new one that was built by Merlin Shaw. So what's really nice about this RF modulator replacement is that you can route all of the RGB signals to it, and it uses a Genesis 2 9-pin mini DIN. So what's really great about this connector is that you don't have to cut the shell. It fits right in where the RF modulator used to be, and you get composite video, you get RGB, all from one connector, and you can use either RGB cables or you can use HD Retrovision cables with this particular board. It also has this 3-position switch right here, and this lets you toggle between the 3 different palettes that this particular version of the NES RGB has. This isn't really necessary nowadays because the modern NES RGB uses button combinations to switch palettes, but I have an older version here, so this is definitely appreciated for me. And then you also get composite video and mono sound out of the side over here. So it's definitely something worth considering if you're doing an NES RGB mod, because it makes for a very clean installation. As you can see, it's all contained on the board itself. There's no cutting of the shell, and if I want to transfer it like I'm doing right now, you literally just screw it into the new shell and you're good to go. So yeah, that's kind of just a general overview of how the console is set up. I guess the one thing to mention really quickly is that if you happen to use this power board, you do have to wire up RGB a little bit differently. So you can see these 3 wires right here. This is RGB, red, green, and blue. So normally, if you're not using a Genesis connector, you would wire up RGB right here, and then you could send that out to an 8-pin mini DIN, or you could send it out to a Super Nintendo multi-out. That's very common. But if you're using a Genesis, either SCART cable or HD Retrovision cable, there are additional components in that cable to process the RGB signal. And so if you go from here where there's 75 ohm terminated RGB, you actually end up adding extra components and darkening the image, and you really don't want to do that. So you really have to kind of tap into the quote-unquote raw RGB, and thankfully you can do that very easily on the NES RGB right here. So there's these 3 vias right here next to the RGB encoder chip, and so if you just solder in your red, green, and blue right here, like how you've seen me do it, then you can use a Genesis 2 connector, and the color levels are correct. It's not too dark, and yeah, you just have the advantages of using this board, which is that there's no cutting, and you can use component, and you can use RGB. All right, so yeah, that's my long-winded overview of this motherboard right here. So let me go ahead and start installing it into its final home. All right, so everything is fully assembled, and I've got to say this thing looks absolutely gorgeous. I am really happy with the final results. So yeah, I didn't really have any trouble assembling it. The only thing that kind of sucked was that the tiny screws up here, they're not standard from the original Nintendo, and they're kind of annoying to deal with. You really need like a flathead screwdriver to deal with them. So if you're buying one of these and building it for yourself, I would recommend leaving those original Nintendo screws off and just using regular Phillips screws that you could pull off of, like, say, a Game Boy or something like that. That's just way nicer than the original screws that were in a Nintendo console. But yeah, apart from that one annoyance, it looks really great. I mean, when you're looking at it from the top, you can see what game is inserted, and you can see the motherboard and the power PCB. And then here on the bottom, it's really nice too because they copied the original design. So the original shell has a textured bottom just like this, except for these areas here, but this is where the labels go. I'm debating whether I want to take the labels off of that shell and put them onto here. Let me know what you guys think. For now, I'm probably going to leave it alone, but I may consider swapping those labels onto here. And then this is where the rubber feet go. I'm going to find some replacements to put on here just so that this doesn't slide as easily as it currently does. But yeah, from down here you can see the NESRGB, and you can see all the components of the Opentendo. And what's really cool is you can see the bottom of the power module, and you can actually see the Long Island Retro Gaming logo here, because I did help Merlin a little bit with troubleshooting and testing this board, and as a token of thanks, he added my logo down to the bottom here, which I really appreciate. So yeah, that's it. Let me just flip it around onto the back, and so you can see here's the Genesis 2 connector. And so, you know, an RGB cable or an HD Retrovision component video cable will fit right in here, and you can get RGB from that. And here's our palette switch, and that works perfectly. And then here's our power brick, or our port for the power brick right here. So this will work with an official AC adapter from an NES, or you could take a DC power supply and use it here as well. You guys might notice here in the corner there is a little square, or I'm sorry, rectangular cutout. This is here for using the SNES multi-out that's super popular with NES RGB installations. So you can literally just cut this out and then squeeze it into place right here. I ended up not doing that because, again, I really like having this clean, no-cut look. But still, it's really convenient that this is here. It makes that installation much easier as well. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and plug this thing in, and I can show you how it looks. Okay, so I've got it all plugged in, and I mean, I fully expect it to work because I've been playing on this thing on and off for the last 2 years now, but this is going to be its inaugural power on in its final shell, so I figured I'd film that together with you guys. So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention too is that I also have these. So I discovered that the website Retromodding has transparent NES shells, and I think they also have a couple of different colors too. But once I saw this, I had to grab them just because, you know, it's a perfect match with the console. I mean, one thing I have to say is that the build quality of these is not quite as nice. I mean, the plastic feels good, but it's frosted over. It's not clear like I was kind of hoping it would be, but you know, it's still pretty cool, and it is a pretty good match for the console itself, which is right over there. All right, so I've got it all plugged in. Let's give it a test. Oh, that's just gorgeous. All right, so yeah, you can see that everything is working fine. The RGB looks super crisp. I'm gonna go ahead and just pick a game real quick. Sure, let's do, yeah, I guess I'll just do standard Super Mario Brothers because that's just what everyone knows what it's going to look like. So let me go ahead and just switch the palette for you. You can see there's the switch back here. So if I just toggle that, there we go. So that's one position. This is the default, and here's the third one. Personally, I always leave it like this because I want the sky in Super Mario Brothers to look blue, and this color palette to me just looks really accurate. So yeah, it's working perfectly, and I finally have, you know, the most modern new NES that I could possibly build from scratch. And I have to say a huge thank you to RGR Dev for developing this thing and making it commercially available so that anyone can get it. I'll have a link in the description for all the various parts I used to build this thing. And of course, if you guys have any consoles that you want repaired or modified, or if you want me to build you one of these, I'd be more than happy to do it. You can reach me at oneuprestorations.com. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.